G'day, g'day. It's Nick here and welcome to Wicked Wildlife. Now on our channel, we've talked about a lot of Australian animals, but as far as it goes, the reptiles generally get the lion's share of our content. But in today's video, I want to introduce you to Rocco, our red-tailed black cockatoo, and share with you 10 facts about the red-tailed black cockatoo that I think you didn't know. So stick around, guys. Fact number 1. The red-tailed black cockatoo is actually the first Australian bird to have been illustrated by a European. Way back in 1770, on Captain Cook's voyage on the Endeavour, Sidney Parkinson, the artist who was on board, drew a red-tailed black cockatoo that he found in northern Queensland, making it the first Australian bird ever to be illustrated by European scientists. Number 2. While Europeans might have first illustrated this bird in 1770, the cultural significance this bird has to first Australians dates back tens of thousands of years. You see, Aboriginal groups in New South Wales have stories that the red-tailed black cockatoo is actually the animal that gave fire to mankind, and the tail feathers from this species are an important part of sort of the ceremonial headdress in some areas. In other parts of Australia, like the Tiwi Islands in the Northern Territory, it's believed that red-tailed black cockatoos are responsible for guiding the spirits of people to their eventual resting places. So they've also got a very, very long-lasting cultural significance to our first Australians. Number 3, we actually have 5 different subspecies of red-tailed black cockatoo distributed throughout the country. Across northern Australia, you've got 2 different species found from the top end of WA all the way across into Queensland, the top of New South Wales. You've got this species here, which is found from the Pilbara through Central Australia. And you've also got 2 subspecies found in Southern Australia, one in my local area, southwestern Victoria and southeastern South Australia, and another found over in the southwestern corner of WA. Now, some of the things that separate these different subspecies is size. The southern versions are much smaller than the northern subspecies. But the biggest differentiation is beak shape. All 5 subspecies have slightly different beaks depending on the food that they eat. There's also some behavioural differences, with the 2 southern subspecies being entirely arboreal. You never see them on the ground, while the northern counterparts are willing to feed on the ground. So there's some behavioural and physical differences that make these guys a fairly diverse species of bird. Number 4. Unfortunately, at least one species of the red-tailed black cockatoo is listed as an endangered species. And it's actually the one in my local area, the southeastern red-tailed black. Now, these guys today number less than 1,500 individuals and 300 breeding pairs. And their biggest issue is that they've got a reduction in their food supply. Our local subspecies has a very specialised diet, really only eating 3 different types of plants. And due to changing fire regimes and land clearing, these plants are becoming less and less reliable to them, and their food sources have dwindled away to the point that they're an endangered species. Now, over in Western Australia, their southern population, the forest red-tailed black, is doing a little bit better, but he's still listed as vulnerable for similar reasons, habitat loss, things like this. So, unfortunately, our red-tailed black cockatoos aren't doing too well, at least here in southern Australia. Number 5. The red-tailed black cockatoo was actually the mascot for the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne back in 2006. And this particular individual was meant to be the southeastern red-tailed black cockatoo, being an endangered species that's native to the state of Victoria. Now, they named this mascot Karak, which is an indigenous word for red-tailed black cockatoo, but whether or not people realised at the time, it's actually a word used in Western Australia for the forest red-tailed black cockatoo, not the red-tailed black that was meant to be the mascot. But it's still a nice use of an indigenous name, and it was still nice to see our red-tailed black cockatoo represented on sort of a global scale. Number 6. The vast majority of red-tailed black cockatoos, at least here in southern Australia, are left-handed or left-footed. So this isn't all that unusual. In fact, the vast majority of cockatoos around the world favour their left hand. But what's unusual about black cockatoos is while this is the case in the southern populations using their left foot to pick things up to feed with things like this, the northern populations are largely ambidextrous. Feeding on the ground, they seem to use their left and right foot in roughly equal proportions. But at least here in southern Australia, our red-tailed black cockatoos, they're all lefties. Number 7. Red-tailed black cockatoos are actually what we call sexually dimorphic, meaning males and females look very different. Males like Rocco here are basically jet black with a nice red blaze across their tail, while females and juveniles are covered in sort of yellowy speckles and dots and things like this. So you can tell the difference from them by distance based on their colour. Now, a lot of birds are this way in crime, where males and females look a little bit different. The males are often more showy. But in cockatoos, a lot of our cockatoos have to be DNA tested to tell males from females, making red-tailed black cockatoos relatively unusual amongst their family, being sexually dimorphic. Number 8. Red-tailed black cockatoos in the wild only raise one chick a year. Now, they are able to lay more than one egg, but because they don't all hatch on the same day, whichever baby hatches first will be the biggest, will get the food, and the other ones will basically be neglected and starved. So they're only able to raise one chick a year. Now, if they lose this chick, some of our species are able to lay a second clutch of eggs, and again, only raise one of them. But if that baby survives, they're going to look after that baby all the way through to sort of adolescence, meaning they're only able to reproduce one baby a year, which certainly doesn't help, considering that some of these guys are endangered species. Now, in captivity, we're able to work with this a little bit. In some places, we'll actually have a red-tailed black cockatoo lay eggs, they'll hatch, and they'll pull the baby off mum, they'll hand raise it artificially, and mum will lay another egg. Meaning if we're dealing with an endangered species, we can artificially increase their rate of reproduction. But out in the wild, one baby annually is it. Number 9. Red-tailed black cockatoos, at least in captivity, seem to live for around 50 years. Now, while this is certainly a long time as far as the animal kingdom goes, people seem to imagine that cockatoos of all species are going to live to 100 plus because Aunt Beryl had a cocky that outlived her. But Taronga Zoo, they've had individuals reach about 50. London Zoo had an individual reach 45 and 7 months. So 50 years is about the lifespan of a captive red-tailed black cockatoo. And lastly, number 10. There's actually several ways that you can help red-tailed black cockatoos. If you live in the arid areas, you can join things like the annual cocky counts. Here in Victoria, South Australia, we have an annual count for our southeastern red-tailed black cockatoo, and over in WA they have a similar program for theirs, where volunteers go out into the bush and they basically take a count to get a population estimate on the individuals that are in the wild, which helps to make management decisions with regards to land use and conservation, things like this. On top of that, you could volunteer to plant habitat trees and food trees with groups like BirdLife Australia and Conservation Volunteers Australia. But if you don't live in these areas, that's fine. You can donate to groups that do this sort of tree planting and create more habitat for red-tailed black cockatoos. So regardless of where you are in the world, whether you live in the right place or whether you're anywhere else on Earth, there is a way that you can help red-tailed black cockatoos survive into the future. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed meeting Rocco, our resident red-tailed black, here at Wicked Wildlife HQ, and let me know in the comments how many of these facts were new to you and how many did you already know. If you haven't already, guys, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff, but check on back next week because there is lots more wildlife coming. But between now and then, be nice to wildlife, have a good one and take care.